Good morning football. I feel like I'm on the NFL Network right now, just waking up Saturday morning. I know, Brendan, it's 3 hours earlier for you, so I shouldn't be complaining. We're talking NFL draft, Beasts of the East. Who had the best draft in the NFC East? So we're going to be talking about today. So good morning, Brendan. 11 o'clock over here. I'm tired of shit. It's 8 o'clock over there, so I shouldn't be complaining at all.
8 a.m., man. 8 a.m. in Vegas is like, 6 a.m. to the rest of the world right now. So, but it's good to be with you. I'm glad we were able to kind of get this going, talk a little more about the NFC East, see who really excelled, see who kind of left a couple question marks undiscovered.
Yeah, we'll quickly go through the Eagles. Like I know the draft talk has been nauseating. We've been doing so much of it. It's already 2 weeks after the draft. So we'll just quickly go through the Eagles, and we'll go through the rest of the teams in the NFC East a little bit more extensively. But you're the draft expert. I've already given my thoughts on the Eagles. How did you think the Eagles did in the draft?
I really like the Eagles pick, especially the first, I would say really the first 4 picks. I mean, they all are guys who pretty much can walk in and at least contribute right away. I mean, obviously we talked about Derek Barnett a ton. I think he's a fantastic fit for what the Eagles want to do in a 4-3 scheme that doesn't really want to blitz a lot. He makes a ton of sense there. Sidney Jones is a great pick. I mean, look, 4 months ago we were talking about Sidney Jones being the first round 14th overall pick, and the Eagles got him in the second. Now a lot of people are saying, "Oh, well, he's not going to help us this year." Well, your Eagles really shouldn't go into the season thinking, "Hey, we're going to be anything more than 10 wins." That's just not realistic right now. So the way I look at Sidney Jones is the Eagles traded a second round pick to get a first round player next year. So to me, makes a ton of sense. Rasul Douglas is a nice corner to get a little excited about. Big, lanky, long. Reminds me a lot of DRC. So he's a nice pick there. Probably a guy who's going to get a lot of playing time just because not a lot of depth, with the Birds corners this spot. Matt Collins, big guy to kind of challenge the field deep. And then we have Pumphrey, and that's the last one I want to kind of talk about. But to me, I really, really was disappointed with Pernell Pumphrey's draft pick. But, Adrian, let me kind of hear from you. What are your thoughts on some of their picks?
Yeah, I like what they did. I like how they attacked the cornerback position because that was the biggest position of need. A lot of depth at cornerback in this class. So they go second and third round. They attacked it exactly how I wanted to. Barnett wasn't, a sexy pick. Right when they did it, nobody really liked it, but it looks better over time because of kind of how the draft board played itself out. I see where you're coming from with Pumphrey. I'm watching his tape right now. I'm gonna have a film study out either today or tomorrow, and you see all the Sproles comparisons. I don't think he's like Sproles because I don't see how he can run routes like Darren Sproles. I think he's more of a running back. I don't know if he can really catch the ball. So yeah, you said Pumphrey you didn't like the pick. I'll let you explain why.
Yeah, so Pumphrey, I think he's a good player. I mean, look, there's no doubt that he was drafted for a reason. I mean, it's Sproles' contract year, so there certainly kind of makes sense there. Sproles, as great as he is a little older. Now, Pumphrey, he's the all-time leading FBS rusher, so obviously he's doing something right. Let's not dismiss the guy. He's done a ton of good things, and he's a slender build. He is from Vegas, so got to pull a little more West Coast love for him. But the reason I didn't love it, if I remember correctly, the Eagles actually traded up to get him. So to me, I was like, okay, let's see who they pick here. And then they picked him. The reason I don't love it, guys like Marlon Mack were still on the board. Guards like Wayne Goldman were still on the board. And Jamal Williams from BYU were still on the board. So, I like Pumphrey, don't get me wrong. But personally, if I was the Eagles, I would have much rather picked Marlon Mack. I mean, Adrian, you and me talked a lot about him in our running back preview. And we both said, hey, he's the back that we like the most as a sleeper. So when the Eagles traded up, I was hoping it was for Marlon Mack because he's probably more of a complete NFL-ready back, while Pumphrey's really going to be more of a third-down specialist. That was a big minus for me. So that's why I don't really love the Pumphrey pick. If the Eagles didn't move around and drafted him after all these backs went before him, I would have been fine with it. But because of where he was picked and who was picked after him, I really don't love the pick.
Well, in the fourth round, I don't know if you watch my live reaction videos, probably not. But in the fourth round, those 2 picks that they had, I wanted them to go cornerback. I wanted another cornerback, and instead they went Matt Collins, and then they trade up for Pumphrey. And the Pumphrey thing initially, I was like, wow, there are better running backs on the board. I was like, okay, I get the Darren Sproles thing, but I would have rather had Marlon Mack in that situation. I agree with you.
Yeah, I mean, the
But
way I
going
look
back to the cornerback,
Marlon Mack, to
yeah,
me,
go
that
ahead.
was more of a replacement for Ryan Matthews. He's been more of a solidified back. I mean, it's not good. I'm listening to a lot of, Philly talk radio right now, and a lot of that is, guys getting excited about, I can't remember the guy's name, the undrafted guy the Eagles
Oh
signed from
my God,
Wisconsin.
we always get excited over these undrafted guys, and then just like, come on, dude.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of those things, like, I'm not trying to knock it. Look, there's kind of a reason, the guy went undrafted. It's like,
Exactly.
you can't really get that excited about a guy who was undrafted, because if you were excited about him, you would have pulled the trigger and drafted him. Now, there's obviously tons of guys who go undrafted and have success in the NFL and, have a role. But like I said, if I'm trading up for a player, I want to trade up for a player who's going to play 3 downs, not a guy who's going to play 1 down. But the big thing that I will give Pumphrey over all these other backs is he's the best return man. So, if that was kind of the Eagles' rationale, I'm okay with it. I can understand it a little more, but I still would have personally taken Marlon Mack.
Yeah, I mean the two fourth round picks were the ones that I nitpicked. Like, the first 3 rounds I love what they did. The fourth round I was just like, you still had Corn Elder, Desmond King, and Demonte Casey on the board. I really would have preferred one of those 3. Especially Eagles, maybe you couldn't use the nickel cornerback, so I went Casey. So that was my thing. I wanted another corner. It was such a good corner class. That's where I would have gone. But anyway, we spent too much time with the Eagles. I didn't want to spend this much time with the Eagles, but we did. What would you give them grade-wise?
See, for me with the Birds, I would probably go A-. I mean, they really got 2 first-rounders, 2 first-round talents, which, to me is fantastic. But we also got to call a spade a spade. We don't know definitively if Sidney Jones is going to come back healthy. We hope he is, right? I mean, that's obviously what we want. But, I mean, Achilles from a corner, that's rough. So it's hard for me to really give him a high grade. This is going to be one of those draft picks that you're going to need to kind of revisit in 2-3 years. The Pumphrey thing is a big minus for me. And then the rest of the guys they drafted were, I mean, Gibson's going to be another return man. Gary and Qualls are both going to be special, or Qualls will be a rotational guy on the front. I mean, overall, I give him an A-. I would have given him an A if Pumphrey would have named Marlon Mack, but overall, very good draft for the Birds.
Yeah, that's where I was at. I was like A-, A. That's where I was at. There we go. All right. We're going to get on to the Cowboys now. And Eagles fans aren't going to like this, but the Cowboys did really good on their draft as well. They did the Eagles logic. They went defensive line the first round. They went pass rusher. And then the next 2 rounds, they go cornerback. So Taco Charlton in the first round. Then who was it? They go Chidobe Awuzie and Jordan Lewis with their corners. So I'll tell you what, a lot like the Birds, I like Lewis. I like the cornerback picks they got too, Awuzie. I'm not a big Charlton guy, but where they took him, I guess it's fine. So Cowboys, what do you think?
As much as Birds fans are probably going to hate this, I love what Dallas did. Dallas sat there, said, "Hey, let's take best player available that fits it." And honestly, sometimes the draft board just got to kind of work your way out, and it did. I'm not a huge Taco Charlton fan. I'm not going to say he's going to have 10 sacks, but honestly, I mean, at the end of the first round, that's what you get. I mean, The thing is you get sometimes you get like, oh, well, he's not great. Who else did you want? I mean, that's realistically what you kind of got to say. So they got him. He's a great fit in the 4-3 as a base D end. And I think that's kind of like, hey, we're officially really ready to move on from Randy Gregory. I mean, the biggest issues the Cowboys had was getting pressure with the defensive line and corners and our defensive backs. I mean, the Cowboys drafted 4 defensive backs. They drafted Awuzie after Jordan Lewis. Then they went after Woods from Louisiana Tech, good big safety. And then they got White, another really good corner from Florida State. I mean, those 3 corners, personally, Adrian, I think they're all going to be in contention to be starters, sooner rather than later. And, Jordan Lewis, for example, he was a guy whose talent probably should have been closer to the second round, but he's got a couple off-the-field things going, so that's kind of a concern. And then they drafted Ryan Switzer, a little higher than I think most people would have thought, him being in the 4th round, but personally, I love him. I mean, he's a Cole Beasley clone in that he wants to play in the slot. I mean, he's going to walk in and be the starting punt returner. I mean, he was dynamic in the punt return game for UNC this past year, and he's going to be a great underneath route runner. And I think this is a really nice pick for what the Cowboys want to do. Overall, I got to give the boys an A. I think, personally, this is a fantastic draft for the Cowboys, especially if Taco Charlton works out.
Like, it was literally the same draft as the Eagles. DN, corner. And even in the 4th round, Eagles go wide receiver. Their first pick was the wideout from North Carolina. It was Matt Collins. And then Dallas, they go wide receiver from North Carolina as well. They take Ryan Switzer. They took the other guy. So they literally did what the Eagles did, except they took more cornerbacks. And they did what I wanted the Eagles to do. I wanted them to take another corner, and they did that. They went with 4 guys in the secondary, 3 corners. I like what they did, and I hate it. I mean, they had a really, really good draft last year too, and they killed it again.
No doubt. I mean, a guy like Noah Brown, who they took there in the 7th round, this is a 6'2", 220 receiver, kind of like a Bryce Butler, a little heavier than what Dez is. They took him in the 7th round out of Ohio State. And a lot of times what happens, guys, when you get a player from a big-name program like Ohio State or Bama, Clemson, etc., a lot of time these guys, there's just so much talent around them. It's hard for them really to shine, and it's hard for them for us as analysts to really be like, oh, this guy's going to be a stud. Well, we don't know definitively because, at Ohio State, most of the receivers, they're starting for 1, maybe 1.5 years, and then they're off to the NFL. So this is one of those guys, don't be surprised down the line if everyone's like, wow, how did he go to the 7th round? Well, he just didn't have time because he's playing behind guys like Mike Thomas from the Saints who led the league in rookie receiving yards. So, that's a nice pick I like from the boys. Overall, definitely an A for Cowboys.
Yeah. All right, let's move on to the G-men now. I guess you could say maybe a little bit of a head-scratcher there in the 1st round, taking Evan Ingram. I don't know. What do you think, Brendan?
Yeah, so here's the thing. I mean, a couple of years ago when I was living in Indy, and Indy took can't think of the guy's name, Philip Dorsett from Miami. I kind of leaned over to my buddy and I said, hey, you know what? The Colts are probably the greatest 7-on-7 team in the NFL. They have great skill position players, but nothing on the offensive line.
Yeah.
And that's kind of what the Giants did. When they were sitting there, they had offensive line options on the board. They had all the tackles were still sitting there. They still had Forrest Lamp on the board. They had a ton of offensive line options there. So to me, when I was standing there at the draft with you, Adrian, I was thinking to myself, man, the Cowboys, or the Giants, they just stayed put, and they're going to get some big offensive line help. And then they went Evan Ingram. Now,
Evan Ingram.
I like Evan Ingram, okay? I think he is a Jordan Reed-esque move tight end. I think he's very, very good player. So I like the player. But, again, kind of like with Pumphrey, I don't love the fact that they passed on bigger needs. So, good pick, in the 1st round, fine. David Thomason, as we know with the Giants, they want to just have really good defensive line play and rotation. Good big D tackle from Bama, so he's going to be well coached. But to me, Adrian, the 2 picks that I really like for the Cowboys were the 3rd and the 4th round. Davis Webb, everyone knows he's this big rocket arm, very, very similar to Brock Osweiler. I think that's a very fair comparison. But he's somewhere where he can literally learn, and there's zero pressure on him. I mean, the Giants also had Ryan Nassib out of Syracuse. So both of those guys, now you have a little battle internally for that second spot to, once Eli finally goes, there's still going to be a good movement to help continue to get Odell and guys like that the ball. They have a great receiving core out there. And then I like Wayne Gillman, a little heavier back from Clemson. They got him in the 4th round. We all knew that was a big need for the Giants. So overall, with the Giants, I'd probably give them a B, maybe a B+, but they literally didn't do anything to help the offensive line. And that, to me, was the biggest concern for the Giants, is helping protect Eli and the rest of the passing game. Because as great as Odell is, unless he's going to go in and play left tackle and then run a hitch route, he can't do it all, man.
Yeah, their only lineman they took was in the 6th round. That to me is just astonishing. First round goes by, even second round you don't go tackle. That's just strange to me. I'll go B, because they didn't really attack the needs that they should have. You like the Davis Webb pick. I mean, for me, it's like, well, you already had Nassib. I mean, maybe he's in the last year of his rookie deal or something. I don't know. That to me seems a little weird to take a quarterback in the third round. I'm with you on the Gallman pick because they struggled running the football. I do like Paul Perkins a little bit. I think he's got some wiggle. I think he could be pretty good for them next year, but they needed that extra running back. Andre Williams isn't there anymore. Not that he was anything, but so I'll go B on the Giants draft. Definitely the worst of the three that we've done so far. So Eagles and Cowboys look like they've been the creme de la creme of the NFC so far. All right, let's go to the Redskins. So the Redskins. So they're the ones they take Jonathan Allen in the first round. It's funny because we did our mock draft, and the Redskins were the ones that took Solomon Thomas in our mock draft because he's the one that fell. Well, in this draft, Jonathan Allen was the one that fell, and they took him in the first round. So do you like the pick there? I would think 3-4 defensive end, he could play there. I'd love the pick, obviously.
Well, sometimes when these NFL teams, they make their draft board, they kind of make their guys, and they say, okay, well, all right, so this is our top 10 players. So who's the guys we're realistically going to draft? Because usually we're Washington was sitting, at 17. They're kind of saying, all right, these are our top players. They're not going to be here. So when Jonathan Allen was there, I bet you they were looking around the room like, wait, was he not picked? Really? No one picked him? There's probably a lot of double takes in the room. So with him being picked there, it's a nice pick. Look, they just lost Arakpuf, a year and a half ago, who was a big edge player for them. Now, obviously, Arakpuf was standing up, but Jonathan Allen, he's a physical down D end. Now, if for some reason they wanted to move to a 4-3 front and get maybe rush with the 4, he could come inside and rush, but I agree with you, Adrian, probably better 3-4 D end. Yep. The thing that always makes me wonder with Bama players is how much wear and tear has gone on with the body. And, we might be starting to see that of why Bama players are starting to get drafted a little later. And then what the Redskins did in the second round, they doubled down in Alabama. They went with Ryan Anderson. They went with another edge guy from Bama. So, again, this was a need for Washington. But to me, I think their biggest need is just offensive help for Kirk Cousins. Look, their best offensive player is Jordan Reed, and he's lucky if he plays 11 games most seasons. So they lost a ton on the offensive side. Samaje Perine, okay, great. Is he anything that gets me more excited than Matt Jones? Not at all. So I don't really love anything that Washington did on the offensive side of the ball. Defense, a lot of solid picks. B, I don't love anything. I think it's solid, but there's nothing here that got me really excited besides Jonathan Allen falling into their lap.
Yeah, the Jonathan Allen pick gives them like a B, but there's nothing else here that's really that great. I remember Robert Davis stood out to me at the combine, but he's just a guy. He's a 6th round pick. There's that. Yeah, Samaje Perine. They got that running back situation there. It's like whoever they want to plug in, they kind of do well. Rob Kelly, who's the other guy? Matt Jones. Who are these guys? So Perine, I guess, fits in. Yeah. But actually, I like the Morrow pick. They drafted Fabian Morrow, the UCLA kid. I like him a little bit, but I'm with you. I thought this was the worst draft of the 4.
I would agree. Because here's the thing. Yes, it's very similar to what the Giants and what the Redskins both kind of went into. Both of them kind of went into with needs, and they didn't necessarily hit on all of their needs, but they didn't take bad players either. But I think the Giants took the better players. So, for me, I think the only thing that if I'm a Redskins fan, I might be a little bit excited is the Jeremy Sprinkle pick in the 5th round. You get a little more of insurance help with the tight end right there, coming from out of Arkansas. He's a nice tight end, so that's kind of a nice pick to get him there. But I don't love it. I don't love really anything they did. I agree with you though, Adrian. Very similar to the Giants. If I'm putting my order, going Cowboys, and then I'm going to Eagles, then I'm going Giants, then I'm going to Redskins.
Yeah, that's my exact order as well. It's funny because like I was raving about the Eagles draft and how they killed it, and like I got the Cowboys #1 on this list, and backing up on last year's draft. I mean, everyone talks about Ezekiel Elliott, everyone talks about Dak Prescott, but they also drafted Malik Collins last year, big factor on their defensive line. Anthony Brown started for them at cornerback, so they killed it again, man, and I hate it.
Yeah, unfortunately, I think the Cowboys did everything they needed to do to kind of solidify where there are not a lot of movement. If I'm Dallas, I probably would like to see them get maybe one more receiver. I'm not a huge Terrence Williams fan, but the Cowboys they let the draft board come to them. They did an awesome job. So definitely the boys, in my opinion, they're in the best spot to win again. But I would probably say the next best team is going to be the Giants. But, man, that offensive line, they got to really come together because they didn't do anything to help them gain any more new talent.
That's unbelievable to me. I don't know how they could go through the draft without addressing the O-line. It's just astonishing. But whatever. That's what they wanted to do. I mean, last year they drafted Eli Apple. That was their first corner. Who was the big cornerback? Who was the big guy last year?
You're right. They signed Judge Norris Jenkins then from the Rams.
Yeah, Janoris Jenkins. They just signed him. Who was the #1 corner? Whatever. I forget already. It's early in the morning for me. 11:30 for me on a Saturday is early.
I hear you.
I'm always up late on Fridays. I'm like in a daze right now. Hair's all messed up. I need a coffee. Anyway, you got anything else you want to say? I know you got to get ready for work.
No, I mean, these are all the big things. I mean, I think overall the NFC East is one of those divisions who did really well in the draft. I don't think there's any team that's like laugh out loud, point at you. I mean, like I said,
no Bears drafts in the NFC East.
I agree. I mean, look, I think they did exceptional. I think every team did okay, respectable. But I think overall, if you're asking me like, so where do we kind of fit this with the rest of the divisions? This is probably one of the best divisions who had a draft in the NFL. I think almost every other division had one team that was a big miss. Everyone here in the NFC East was really solid. If you're asking me, who the best team to drafting overall, personally, I'm going to go the Patriots. And the reason I say that is because they said, hey, you know what? We're going to trade our assets for known commodities. And they got Keanu early. They got Brandon Cooks. They drafted players. They didn't trade away Malcolm Butler. I think they did a great job. Teams who actually picked players. I loved what San Diego did. I think they got the top 2 offensive guards to help Phillip Rivers, and then they went out and drafted arguably the best receiver in the NFL draft this year. So overall, though, very good draft for the NFC East. Eagles fans should be very happy with their picks. Everything should shape up. And now you just cross your fingers that Sidney Jones heals the right way.
Yeah. Quick question about Reuben Foster. What did you hear about him? Did you hear anything about why he might have fell?
Well, the things I heard was that he's might have another shoulder surgery. And of course San Francisco's coming out saying, oh, that's not true. Well, it's probably they don't believe so because I saw another report that San Francisco was trying to shop Navarro Bowman. So obviously, if that's true, then they really think that Foster's good to go right now. I will say this, with Bama players, I mean, look, historically speaking, their bodies are pretty torn up by the time they get to the NFL. The other things I had a concern, and we talked about this with our linebacker coverage, is he's had shoulder surgery and he has a bad history of concussions. Yeah. So it's a major red flag for me, enough that, if I'm a medical person, I might say, hey, I'm going to red flag this guy. We don't want to draft him. So when he started the slide, and essentially there were 30 picks, 30 teams said, hey, no thanks, he's a top 3 talent. So to me, when he started sliding, there's something medical going on. And when the Eagles didn't pick him, I said to some of our buddies, I said, there's something up with him. There's something wrong, and that's why he's sliding. So overall, I think the Eagles did the right thing then and not draft him if that's the case.
It's interesting, too, that even Ozzie loves his Alabama players, and the fact that he would pass on him for Marlon Humphrey as well is interesting.
No doubt. I mean, especially because, the Baltimore Ravens, they they have another middle linebacker on their team in C.J. Mosley, who's an Alabama alum. Yeah. And then their second inside backer, Zach Orr, had his career cut short this past year due to some neck issues. So that was another thing. The Ravens needed a linebacker. So when teams like the Ravens, who arguably are one of the best run programs in the NFL, when they passed on him, on then, if teams like Dallas are saying, hey, no thanks either. Okay, we got something going on here, guys. Teams like the Colts also said, hey, no thanks. We need a linebacker. We're not going to take one here. The Bucs, another one, etc. The Lions took another linebacker ahead of him. So definitely something medical going on. So if I'm the Eagles fans, don't be a butthead and say, oh, my God, we should have taken Foster. No, there's something up with him for a reason. And if he turns out to be a great pro, that's fantastic. But you know what? Obviously, there's a reason that 30 other teams said there's something concerning about him. There's a reason we're not going to draft him.
Yeah. All right, I'll let you. All right, we'll do final thoughts right now, but I'll let you vent about the Ravens draft. I know you didn't like it, and I know you didn't like Marlon Humphrey.
So when we talked, about our DBs drafts, I said the thing I hated most about all the players was Marlon Humphrey. I said I hated Marlon Humphrey because he's a great cover 2 corner. Even when you watch sports science and stuff, all his stuff is him coming out of a break and coming downhill, and that's all well and good. If you're a cover 2 team, the Tampa Bay Bucks running their Buck 2 coverage is the historical example. So he's a corner who plays extremely well, 12 yards and in. That's great. Here's the problem you have. In that same division, you have A.J. Green, John Ross, Antonio Bryant, Martavis Bryant, and then you also have, the potential of Corey Coleman developing. Okay, so you have at least 2 of those. These 2 teams there, so there's 4 games, are going to stretch you vertical. And his biggest problem is tracking the ball vertical. So I hated this pick. When I was there and O.J. Howard's on the board, I was like, yes, take O.J. Howard. This is a steal. Do it. This makes a ton of sense. Nope. Oh, I was so bummed, Adrian. Look, the Ravens are one of those teams, and I'll admit it as a big Ravens fan, I have blind faith in Ozzie. So I can, be upset about it, but I'm like, hey, Ozzie's got a plan. I'm willing to bet on him. And they doubled down, taking edge players out of Bama and out of Houston, in Bowser and Williams. Okay, fine. I don't love either one of them, but I get it. You got to replace Suggs. You got to get some production there. Okay, makes sense. They didn't get any offensive receiving threats for him. I mean, I'm looking at it here. There's not a single player who is a catch-eligible player on the board. I mean, they're coming in with Mike Wallace being their number 1 receiver. That's atrocious. There's a huge issue here. If I'm Baltimore, I don't know why they haven't signed Anquan Bolden or Victor Cruz or someone who knows how to catch a football, because there's nothing Baltimore's got on offense that scares any team. I get it. They've always been a defensive team first. But last time I checked, if you don't score at least 1 point, you won't win a football game. So I hate everything they did about this. I mean, Nico Saragusa is the stud pick in the 4th round. That's fantastic. That's great to hear. I really like the Chris Wormley DN pick out of Michigan. That's another really nice pick. Essentially, he's going to replace Timmy Jarnigan. So, okay, perfect. They traded up to essentially replace Timmy Jarnigan. Makes sense. But they did nothing to help the offense. The offense was bad last year, and it's going to be worse this year. They have Flacco taking up all of the money, and they have a decent offensive line, rotation running backs, tight ends who can't stay healthy, and their best receiver that they drafted 2 years ago in the 1st round can't catch the football. He only can run straight. It's just a huge minus for me. I hate everything the Ravens did. I've become a Las Vegas Raiders fan, and I'm no longer a Ravens fan. The end.
There you go. Sounded like a bitter Raven.
Yeah, there's a different kind of bitter bird on this call today, Adrian.
There you go. That's funny. Yeah. All right. I guess we'll end this now. You got to work in 15 minutes. So actually, that was your final thought. My final thought, I don't really have anything. I'm tired. I might actually go back to bed. So Brendan Albert, I'm Adrian Fedke. I need a coffee. You need to get to work. Yeah.
I'll do it.
I'm a bitch. He's 3 hours behind me. Peace.
Later, guys.